Hello and welcome to a special presentation from In the Money Media. This is our Breeders' Cup Final Answer Show. We are brought to you today by our friends at Mill Ridge Farm. Going to be giving them some shout outs for their various Breeders' Cup connections throughout the course of this video. I'm happy to say that I am not your host today. I am simply a guest. One of the races this week that I'm interested in is my race against my voice to see if I can get to Friday and the last podcast I have to do while still having any of it left. It's looking a little touch and go at the moment, but that's not the only reason we're bringing in a special host. We're bringing her in because it's a special event, and that's what we do, whether we're talking Kentucky Derby or even more important, the Breeders' Cup, when many horses from her native land are appearing. We'll bring her in just 1 minute to kick things off properly, but do also want to let folks know this is the final answer show for me and for JK, but it's not the final answer show for you. And if you're still looking for Breeders' Cup answers, we've got an In the Money Plus package for you that has all kinds of great stuff. Trip notes, horse-by-horse write-ups of all the races, figure equivalents for Japanese and English and Irish runners. InTheMoneyPodcast.com/plus is the place that you want to go to check that out. A phenomenal value at $20. JK, what's up?
Oh, since I work in the Money Media, do you think maybe you could send me that? Because you haven't sent it to me yet.
I thought you were on the list. We'll talk to Tyler and make sure. I think as a co-owner of the company, that's only reasonable. But it just goes to show you that even someone as accomplished as JK, who does his own work, wants to check out what the team have put together. That team includes the woman I'm about to bring in to be your host for the evening. We're going to go through all 14 Breeders' Cup races. The woman who will be guiding the ship, as it were. Proud to call her a colleague at Sky Sports Racing, but really been great getting to know her as she's come over now. I think this is her third Breeders' Cup in a row. Always insightful, helping us out on the podcast and video side. She is Vanessa Ryle. Vanessa, how are things?
Very good. Very good. Settled in to life in Delmar, Pete. So it's great so far. I've done a morning at the track, Tuesday morning, as we record this on Tuesday afternoon. We should timestamp that because, of course, we know how these things can go with horses. A day is a very long time. So fingers crossed all these runners get to Friday and Saturday all right. And you're right, we're going to be looking at all the Breeders' Cup races. And you guys are going to point me and our viewers and listeners in the way of some winners. So is this my cue just to take it away, Pete? Can I step into the host role?
Yeah, go ahead and take those reins.
Okay, well, let's dive straight in. Future Stars Friday, right? All the juveniles to the fore. We will kick off. Let's kick off with the juvenile turf sprint over the 5 furlongs, of course. And it is time for Team Europe. Team Europe to make a splash, guys. Asterius will be a market leader in there for Archie Watson, along with Big Mojo for Mick Appleby, of course, with Big Evs in the race last year. My opening gambit here as the European expert, self-titled European expert on the show, is don't be American fans, don't sort of get brought into Big Mojo being another Big Evs. I'm not saying he's not going to win this, but he doesn't bring in the same level of form that Big Evs brought in, and he doesn't, for me, have quite the same speedy attributes that Big Evs had. I know he's in the same colours. I know he's called Big Mojo. I know he's trained and ridden by the same combination, so it's very easy to think, oh, they're going to do it again. But from a UK standpoint, I would have Asterius a bit above Big Mojo in chance of win. And at the moment in the anti-post betting, they're a bit too close for my liking. Asterius for Archie Watson would be my start and end point here. But obviously, Pete, we will kick off with you. Aidan O'Brien has runners in there. We've got obviously the Japanese as well. So there's a lot more to talk about other than just the top 2 there.
It's a very hard race, no doubt about it. I was going to play a couple of prices and hope for luck. I do respect Asterius a whole lot in here, not enough to make my selection. Akoro Sieg, doing some figure digging on that one. Very, very live, multi-race bets. These are numbers that will be on my tickets. But in terms of coming up with a selection in here, I wanted to go for some of the lesser fancied Euros, trying to make cases for couple of horses that have done some impressive things over there that are still going to be very, very big prices in here. One I was a little bit interested in was Magnum Force And it's just as simple as thinking this is a horse that could be suited by conditions as the forerunner in here and just doesn't really have much to find on form with Big Mojo and Asterius and is a big multiple of those ones' prices. And then the other one I wanted to mention, this is just one of those, JK, you know all about this. At a certain point in the year, you see something on the racetrack and you say, that horse is going to do X. Well, that was me and Shareholder at Ascot when he won so well, winning your in race for this. He looked such a major contender, did not do well in the other race, but soft ground, very different situation. Back here, giant odds, I'm guessing 12, 15 to 1. Those are two runners I'm definitely going to have as A's, and I'll probably be, in English terms, looking to bet each way. But don't get me wrong, contention runs very, very deep in this year's Juvenile Turf Sprint.
Yeah, I would add to that, JK, in regards to Shareholder being the wrong price. As far as I don't think the price difference between Shareholder and the likes of Big Mojo and his co-ownership in Asterius as well should quite be the same. I mean, Wathnan Racing, we're talking about the fact that their jockey James Dorr would have a decision to make between Asterius and Shareholder, and a tough decision at that. And yet the price difference doesn't really reflect that. So if anything, I think he's going to go off the too big a price, JK.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is one of those situations where I've always felt like this is our game. When I say our game, the U.S. game, this Turf Sprinters, the way we get away from the gate. We saw the success that Wesley Ward had coming over to Royal Ascot and kind of starting the trend of Americans coming over there. And the reason he had so much success is just the speed that our horses have early in races. Now, I understand the last couple of years, the Europeans have won. Mischief Magic got a nice setup. Big Evs was a special horse. There's no Wesley Ward monster in here from the U.S. I do think the U.S.'s best chances is Governor Sam for George Weaver. George Weaver obviously had that success at Royal Ascot last year, but this is a horse that just ran so damn fast in the first part of that race at Keeneland last time. The fractions were unbelievable. The pace figures are unbelievable. I like the draw for this horse towards the outside to be able to kind of see what's happening to the inside. So for me, the best chance the Americans have is Governor Sam. And then I'm kind of excited about this Socorro Sieg, right? This is a horse that is a U.S. prepared horse, right? Went 9-4 at OBS. Right. So we know that this horse understands American racing from a mental standpoint, has the speed to go 9-4 in an under tack show, broke the track record for 2-year-olds. Last time he ran was right off the track record the time before that. This horse just seems like he might be the real deal. And I like the outside draw for him as well. So those are my top two in here. This is one of those types of races where you want to kind of move around, spread around to a certain extent. But if you're going to hold my feet to the fire for a pick, I'm going to go with the Japanese horse, number 8, Socorro Sieg. My heart pick will be Governor Sam and my man Reagan Swinbank Stables.
Yeah, Team Japan could be off to an absolute flyer there. And of course, we know that they've come over in their droves this time around, and they'll be going home with some prizes. That we do know. Let us roll on then to the Juvenile Fillies, Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Immersive will be right at the top of this market for Team Brad Cox. You all know the drill with this filly by now. She brings in the grade 1 form for you. She's unbeaten, 3 from 3. She's taking on a few horses she's met before, but Scottish Lassie is in there, non-compliant as well. Quick Kick, of course, has been beaten by Immersive when they last met. Let us start with you, JK. We'll bounce around with who gets to kick off and have first stab at these races. Does anything beat Immersive?
Look, I like Immersive. Like, you win 2 grade 1s as a 2-year-old, one at Saratoga, one at Keeneland. You got my attention. I did notice, I know you were probably just getting in on Twitter, non-compliant is not going to run, scratched. They announced, do
you know what?
2 hours ago it came up.
Yeah, I saw that in the betting that a few people had taken her down. So I did actually sort of slightly note that, but I haven't written it out in my notes. But yes, I saw that something must have gone awry with her.
I like Scottish Lassie. I thought she ran extremely well last time. I think Jorge Abreu does an outstanding job. I thought she ran well last time, got a fast speed figure. And one of the things I like to lean on with these young horses is fast figures. I think if you can find horses that are in fast races that you don't really have a lot of evidence if they're fast or not, the market doesn't really trust them, you can find some value by trying to nab a fast horse. I thought Scottish Lassie ran well last time. I like the outside draw, even though there's a chance you're going to be wide around. There's enough tactical speed. You should be able to work something out. And then Quick Kick. is one that I wanted to make sure I had for Tom Amoss, who I thought has some talent as well. Other than that, this is a pretty wide open situation. I'd want to have immersive on tickets. I'd probably like to have some savers with the 4 Lucara for Mark Cassie, and then American Bikini. Pete, I'll let you elaborate. I know you've done a couple of podcasts already talking about this one, but she feels like one you probably want to keep in the mix as well.
Yeah, she's fast and good, and definitely one that I'm going to want on side in some of those longer multi-race bets. I definitely respect American Bikini, and she really stacks up well on some of that figure equivalency work our friends have been doing over on the inthemoneypodcast.com /plus side. Shout out to Alex Henry for all the help she's been doing on that project with the Japanese runners. I made Quick Kick my top pick in here, and I could just be wrong, but she just looked to me the last day like one with more to come. I thought she was a little bit green and is a trier, and I thought she's had some difficult journeys. Now the figures don't stack up to Scottish Lassie or American Bikini, and I could be falling victim to that trick of trap, I guess is the word I'm looking for, of betting a trip horse out of a slower race. But I'm going to go with her at the current prices. I'll be messing around with those other two as well. But my top pick in the race is going to be number 5, Quick Kick.
Okay, beautiful then. Let us roll on to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf over the mile. Late Victoria for Team Aidan O'Brien will be a red-hot favourite in this. Unbeaten, 4 from 4, 2 Group 1s to a name. Talking about immersive winning a couple of grade 1s and catching JK's attention. That's exactly what Late Victoria has done over in the UK and Ireland, of course, over different trips on different ground, different countries. She's proving very versatile thus far in her 4-race career. And it's great. It's great that, she's one of Aidan O'Brien's top 2-year-olds, fillies or colts, and he's bringing her over to a Breeders' Cup, and she gets to try and strut her stuff somewhere else and show her versatility again. It's hard to pick a hole in her, Pete, that her form is obvious and says that, and she's just been winning and doing it professionally. But she's obviously got new challenges this time around. She's drawn in stall 1. And she's got to take on a whole clutch of different form lines. Thought Process will be well fancied, I'm sure, along with a fair few others, really. But Thought Process seems the obvious challenger to her in the betting anyway. Can you put anyone else in the mix away from those 2 really obvious ones in here?
It's very rare that in the write-ups I do for attheraces.com, my top play is an exacta. It's rarer that it would be an exacta with the top 2 choices, but that's how straightforward I feel like this race is. I think they're going to probably be good exacta partners. Now, this is one of these things where it's frustrating because Americans pool betting, we're not able to take these prices that are out there right now. But earlier today, there was one bookmaker in Ireland that had Thought Process somehow at 8-1. And honestly, if Thought Process is 8-1 and Lake Victoria is 11-10, Thought Process would actually be the number 1 pick. In the pools that 90% of the listeners here and viewers are going to be able to have access to, I'm still going to make Lake Victoria my top pick because I think Thought Process is going to be more on the order of 5-2. But I feel like this is one where you could play this exacta and just be done with it, or try to lock it up with those 2 in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge and be done with it, or play some long shots, from in multi-race bets and just use those 2. And that's how I'm going to proceed in here. It's not creative, but, we don't force things on this show, Vanessa.
No, and I love that. And sometimes, it's the madman that looks away from the blindingly obvious, basically, JK. Are you sticking with the blindingly obvious here with those top 2 being the focus points? Or do you have any other way to play this race given how clear-cut those 2 are at the top of the market?
Well, I think one of them is very obvious. I think one of them is one of the worst kind of short price bets I think you can make for the weekend. So let me start with, I feel like this race likely has the most talented runner in it that we've seen since Newspaper of Record. I don't think that this is the normal situation where Chad's got a slew of really good ones. I think Virgin Colada is kind of a B team type for Chad. And I think if you look through these horses in here, outside of Kilwin, there's no other horse except for Thought Process who was favored in their last start and won. It's just a bunch of horses that have just kind of taken turns winning races. So which one of those two do I love and which one do I dislike? I don't need thought process. These types of California horses don't ever win these races. The other thing about thought process is the horses that she's been beating. She beat a Baffert horse on the turf. She beat a maiden claiming, a horse that went back out and won a maiden claiming race on the dirt. Another one that was a turf sprinter. Another horse in Tigers that won at Indiana. She just hasn't really been beating anything. And I think Lake Victoria is the goods in here. I absolutely love the draw. I love the fact that she's got cover in her previous races. She's trained to have cover, to accept cover, to take cover, to appreciate cover. She's going to save ground on both turns, down on the inside with Ryan Moore. I think she's going to produce that run, and that grade 1 quality is going to come pouring out of her skin when she turns for home at those tight turns at Del Mar. And if Pete, who I know Pete knows a sound in my voice, you can imagine that I'll be heavily involved.
Interesting. I mean, I agree. If she breaks, she wins. My fear about the rail is a really cruddy break, and it'll be hard to recover. And we do know there's a high percentage of these Aidan O'Brien runners that just don't break. But I hear what you're saying. Once she breaks, the rail is the absolutely perfect place to be, and she could probably just control the race from there. And I will just add this. I mean, we've seen a lot of talented juveniles. It's been shown that the best European juveniles can come over here, or at least the European juveniles that come over here can go on to win the best races. You know, we've had Derby winners and Guineas winners galore at this point who've contested the Breeders' Cup. But all that said, this is the best form in this race, or in a juvenile race, that we've seen. She's supposed to win. She just needs to get out of there. I mean, I'm not as sour on thought process as you. I just like the way she finishes up in her races. I agree she hasn't been beating anything, but I think she can beat the rest of these.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just not, it's sad. And it's just not a great group. I don't, like I said, Virgin Colada to me is like the third or fourth Chad. I know that Chad was higher on Opulent Restraint. He was higher on Lavender Disaster, who blew the turn in that last race. I just feel like Virgin Colada is kind of like the other one, and he doesn't have the other two like he normally does.
Okay. All right. Well, JK, if you love the draw for Lake Victoria then, and you're happy with her bouncing out of stall 1, let us roll on to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and tell me this. Are you going to be equally as happy about East Avenue jumping out of stall 1, who's going to be a clear-cut favourite for Brendan Walsh in this? Is that an ideal draw for him?
Well, he's got the tactical speed, I think, Vanessa, to be able to hold that position. But in general, though, the one difference is that on the dirt racing, when you miss the break or break a little bit slow, you're going to eat dirt for half a mile. Like Victoria, if she breaks a little slow, she won't have to deal with that. So that's at least a little bit comforting. If East Avenue can run back to what he did in the Breeders' Futurity, I mean, he's going to be tough in here. I'm very excited about watching this race. It's going to be hard for me to really fall in love with anyone here. I'm going to want to make sure I have East Avenue on tickets. I want to make sure I have Jonathan's Way on tickets, who will probably be a top choice.
Punch play.
Has nothing. What's that?
Yeah, punch play.
Who definitely will be one. Chancer McPatrick, another one who hasn't done anything wrong, that's earned his right to be an A-type runner on my tickets. But there is one horse that I do have a little bit of a passionate argument for that I am going to be using as well, while others might be against, and that's Ferocious, who reminds me a lot of whose name you'll probably call him on accident this week, which is Fierceness. Last year, Fierceness had that big debut.
That will definitely happen to me by accident this week, by the way. It's
of course.
Oh, I nearly swore. Oh,
and he ran. It is. He ran so well on debut, and then came back and ran second to Chancer McPatrick, came back and ran second to East Avenue, who will both be at the top of the market. And sometimes these young horses, just things have to kind of fall into place for you to duplicate those efforts, just like with Fierceness last year, right? He had run really well on debut, and then he kind of didn't do much moving forward. Then he shows up and runs off the screen and runs a triple-digit buyer in the Breeders' Cup. I think Ferocious has the type of talent that could potentially happen. So I want to make sure I have all four of them. I'll try to do something a little bit weighted in multi-race wagers. Jonathan's Way I will take as my top choice. I think he's going to be the bigger price of the top three at the market, but I'm not trying to beat Chancer or East Avenue.
Pete, from a sort of like European racing fan looking in here, I'm not going to try and pull the wool over anyone's eyes here and tell you that I'm going to give you some great insight. for a race like this, because that's what you guys are here for. But it's cool and quite engaging, I think, from people from other racing jurisdictions that, at the top of this anti-post market anyway, I should say anti-post market, you've got East Avenue, Chance McPatrick, Jonathan's Way, and Gaming all bringing in unbeaten form cards, all at graded and grade one, the majority of it at grade one level. It's quite a cool clash. It's a race that I feel like everyone can get quite engaged with.
Definitely really has a cool regional aspect to it. The West Coast people I've been talking to are feeling like gaming has been disrespected and that the home team goes with a shot here. It's a really terrific running of this Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And the draw, in this case, helped me make my final decision. Not that East Avenue can't win. He's still an A-level contender for me down there. But I do think him being down there, a Baffert sprinter being drawn so close to him, Baffert, known for team tactics at times. I just think the pace is going to be that much faster with East Avenue drawn at the rail and a Baffert three-headed monster in there as well. It's not easy to come from far back at Del Mar. It could be Chancellor McPatrick's undoing. But with this draw, with the talent he's shown, I think there's going to be enough pace to set it up for him. I'm going to use the same horses as Jonathan, but for me, it's a much clearer delineation where Chancellor McPatrick is the A, and those other three, including Ferocious, who I think JK makes a strong case for, are going to be used more at the B level. Jonathan, when you talked about weighting these contenders, if you had to sort of make them into A's and B's, how would you do it? Or are they all kind of A's? And when you talk about weighting, you just mean betting different combinations on them.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's tough. It's tough. I feel like if I just don't feel right about making like a horse like East Avenue a B. I prefer, I think, the others more based on the price. We can also just kind of see where that's at. And with opinions like I have with Lake Victoria and you don't have to always lock yourself in a box with one horse. There's ways you can efficiently tie up races. I would tell you one horse I'll use as a B horse, and that's the 8 Shin Believe, who, if you can win a 9 furlong race and someone decides to put you on an airplane and bring you to another country to run in a race, they must think you have a little bit of talent. And while some of these don't want to go 2 turns, which we'll find out, we always do, Shin Believe will be finishing his race. And I think that that's at least a horse to keep in the mix. If for whatever reason Chancellor McPatrick gets too far back, Jonathan's Way tricked us and that he was very good, or broke slowly like he did on debut, or that Ferocious actually isn't ferocious at all, or that East Avenue misses the break from the inside. I think that there's a world in which, we've seen worse horses win races at the Breeders' Cup than what I believe Shin Believe is.
Okay, let us move on then. Last race on the Friday to cover a Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf over the mile. And fascinating from our European standpoint. We've got New Century in here who will be pretty much, I'm pretty sure will top the betting for the Andrew Balding yard. Of course, last seen at Woodbine, winning the Grade 1 Summer Stakes over there, and in the process beating Al Qudra, who'll match him, who he will meet again in this, and was beaten obviously at Woodbine. Then Godolphin are also throwing in Amori City, which is actually the pick of William Buick, which is like this total, that's kind of, for me, Pete, thrown a real spanner in the works, because obviously William Buick will have had the choice of the Charlie Appleby runners. Al Qudra looks as though obviously has the better draw in 4, but the much of a muchness between them, but the betting hasn't got them that close at the moment anyway. And then the Waco Kid for Hugo Palmer.
Great pronunciation.
There you go. Yeah. And then a horse that I think is far too big a price, but is drawn out in 13, Henri Matisse. Henri Matisse, Pete. I was talking, you're going to have that European piece from Matt Chapman to enjoy. And he makes a really good point in here about Henri Matisse. He basically says that he's probably the horse in here with the most latent ability and talent and engine, but his mind is making things tricky for him currently. Whereas a horse like New Century might not have the absolute clear-cut start, real ability that Henri Matisse has, but he's doing all the right things and he's building a profile and he comes here on an upward curve. So it's like the straightforward New Century versus the quirky dog, I think I called him, that is Henri Matisse, which is probably a little bit cruel, not going to lie. But
Not if you watch that last run closely. Dog sounds about right.
Yeah.
But maybe they've got it figured out.
Yeah, so that's where I stand with it. But and 13, what's he going to do out of 13 as well? So fascinating, this. Loads of different layers that make this fascinating. And that's not even bringing in the unbeaten Zulu Kingdom for Chad Brown, of course. So, Pete, where are you at here?
Without talking, you and I had similar thought processes.
Oh, really?
I'm kind of getting away from the form of the Grade 1 summer. I think it's really bad that Buick didn't choose Al Qudra. Now, granted, in 2022, I would have told you it was really bad that he didn't choose Rebels Romance, and obviously we know how that worked out. So these things can be overthought. But I had enough questions about the form of the summer anyway. It's not bad form, but I don't know how it's going to stack up. I just find them both a little unappealing at the prices. I'm going to reach here, and I think Satono Carnival, the Japanese runner, is really interesting. I mean, JK made points about trusting the Japanese to be able to do really impressive things with their juveniles. And this one has a figure to back that up. And even though he did not go 2 turns like the one JK liked in the other race, this one you watch that tape, this one wants to go farther. And I just think he's interesting, and I think he might be overpriced. And I'm going to make him my top selection in here. Henri Matisse is in the mix for me, despite that ugly last run. And it's sort of a funny thing where I almost think what's going to happen here with the 13 post is not unlike what happened with Hit It a Bomb back in 15, where a runner gets marooned in this race, and then the price becomes a multiple of what it should be. I feel like that's already starting to happen with Henri Matisse, might start happening even more. I like him at the price he's going to be based on the talent he's shown. I mean, on a form and figures case, his best run is the best race, I think, and yet he's going to be a price. So let's see if Ryan Moore can work his magic. He's done it before in this race from Tough Post. And then the other one I want to mention that I could just be dead wrong about, I really like Noble Confessor as a horse. And I said to myself a couple of weeks ago, watching back the run with Zulu Kingdom, that if his maiden somehow snuck in this race, that I wasn't going to let him beat me at 20-1. And I'm not going to let him beat me at 20-1. I think he's a little interesting. I think he could come forward and be the kind of horse that wins. And people say, how did Todd Pletcher just pay $35 in the Breeders' Cup? I'm a little bit interested in him as well. Those are my main 3 in here, but a lot of ways you can go.
Yeah, JK, if we're talking about like a horse like Henri Matisse not being sort of helpful in the mind department currently, I've done a few preview shows with you now, and I feel like you will hate that angle that me and Pete are clutching onto, that he's got ability, but he's not putting it in. I just feel like you're not going to appreciate that from us.
Well, it's funny, and that's what I do every year when it comes to the European horses. There's a handful of people who I believe and understand, and trust, and I listen to the words that come out of their mouth, and then I attempt to take all of those words together and try to let it come out to be something good. And here's what I'm taking from what you just said for me. The horse has a lot of ability, but his mind gets in the way. He's taking the blinkers off, and he's drawn in the 13. So if he's got a behavioral issue, I'm not sure I want him in the clear on a big day like this, on tight turns that are shaped like a paperclip, being kind of a kooky guy. So with that said,
you put it so much more politely than us, JK. We called him a dog, and you just call him a kooky guy. I love it. Just a good guy, JK. Just a good guy.
Yeah, so that's what they say. That's what they say. So I'm going to use an embarrassing amount of horses in this race. This is also a race where I will not be touching in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. This is one of those races I will be alive to a lot of horses in multi-race wagers, and then turn the page, be a fan for a little bit. I'm rooting like hell for New Century and our friends at Qatar Racing, Sheikh Fahad, the boys in claret and gold. I'm rooting for New Century. But there is also a couple in here that I think are interesting too. Noble Confessor, Pete, I had that written down. Just a little backstory. This summer, the buzz around Saratoga in the Chancellor McPatrick maiden race is that Noble Confessor was one of Todd's, if not Todd's, best 2-year-old. He got beat that day by Chancellor McPatrick, who ran extremely well, who was Chad's best 2-year-old. They came back, tried to go long. That didn't go well. And then that best 2-year-old thing kind of came out a little bit in that turf race with some trouble and was really running on late. I completely agree with you about Noble Confessor. And then Minty is another one who is a full to fierceness, City of Light. There was at one point I did a stat where like 20 of the 20 best City of Lights, like 9 of them won on the grass, and like the other 2 ran well on the grass. These horses run well on the grass. This horse has a lot of talent, and the fact that Todd is making the decision to go long when he could have easily run in the turf sprint, he decided to go long in here. I think that's another one that I want to make sure that I'm alive to. Like I said, I'm going to spread in here like crazy, but New Century is the top choice. I want to make sure I have those 2 lanes inside, City of Light, Minty, and Noble Confessor, Quality Road.
When in doubt, go with the sponsors, JK. I like this is a winning attitude.
Yeah. Whilst we're talking about the sponsors, and as we roll on to Saturday, guys, we should mention a bit of Millridge interest in the undercard to start with, because in the Goldacova Stakes, Brian Meehan, who's got JRB, who'll run later on Saturday as well, we'll get to his chances shortly. He also saddles Kathmandu in that Goldacova race just before the Breeders' Cup races kick off. And Kathmandu is due to be sold at the Fasig-Tipton Night of the Stars sales by Millridge. Brian Meehan's filly, she brings in some pretty decent European form line. She gets Holly Doyle on board, and it'd be great if she could win this and then obviously go to the sales that night with the Stars. So many nice horses selling, and Millridge will have a couple of them, including as we move on to the first of the Breeders' Cup races, because the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint is the first Breeders' Cup race on Saturday, and the likely favourite for that, or the anti-post favourite currently, is of course Ways and Means. And Pete, Ways and Means is out of Strong Incentive, who is also selling by Millridge, being consigned by Millridge at the Fasig-Tipton Night of the Stars sale as well. And Strong Incentive is this incredible dam. She's already produced plenty of really top class horses, and she's got Ways and Means to her name, and she's in foal to Into Mischief. So she's going to be a real headline act at the sale, which is pretty cool. And of course, Team Millridge will be rooting for Ways and Means here to continue her winning streak she's currently on. Do you think she can in this race, Pete?
I love it. And I think there's a chance, honestly, and I will talk more about Ways and Means specifically, but I'll give you my exacta too, because that ties into Millridge, because they've also got a half to Vava, Signal from Noise, at the Keeneland sale. Signal from Noise was placed in the Beldame. And those actually, sponsor aside, you're going to think, people are going to listen and be like, JK's picking these horses, Pete's picking these horses. These are our actual opinions, folks. It just sometimes works out nice that way. But yeah, Ways and Means to me is the kind of backable favorite that you can really build things around. I'm not involved in any way in the BCBC this year, other than rooting for, JK and Matt Miller and the rest of our friends. But if somebody were to ask me where's a place to build around in there, I'd say Ways and Means, because there are reasonable other ways to go, but I just think she looks laid out for this race. When I design the race in my head, it's hard to see her having a bad trip. She's extremely fast. I think she's going to peak on the day. Chad Brown's won this race 2 years in a row. I think he can make it 3. My case for Vava, who's the other one I definitely want to talk about in here, you go through her best bits of form, and I think about the trip she's going to get in here. I just feel like at the current prices, especially that I'm seeing, just looks like one who's overpriced. I mean, the ones in between them, they all make sense, but I feel like you get a whiff of value with Vava for an exacta. But my main bet in here is going to be Ways and Means, and I think she's. It's not like she's some massive overlay, like the others don't have chances, but I just keep coming back to the phrase a bettable favorite, and I'm expecting very big things.
Do you concur, JK? A bettable favorite?
Yeah, no, I think so. And it's funny. I mean, I've told this story a few times, but I'll tell it again for those that haven't heard it. In her 2-year-old year, before.
Yes, I love this story.
We were hanging out at Chad Brown's barn, and there was another jocks agent in there, and they were talking about Todd's horse, and he's got this good one, and Chad's exercise rider came up, and Chad said, "Hey, they said they got a good horse in so-and-so race." And he said, "Well, they better take a picture of her before they break from the gate, because that's the last time they'll see her." And then Chad went on to say that he told me, he said, I'm telling you guys, this might be the best dirt horse I've ever had. And she's turned out to be pretty damn good. So I was always following and always a fan and always excited when she ran for the first time. And then unfortunately she was hurt in the spin away. And then she came back, rushed back In fact, I remember the day that she was hurt in the spinaway, and Chad said, "I'm way behind the 8 ball, but I'm going to try to get her ready for the Kentucky Oaks. I'm going to try." That was the day that he found out that she had hurt herself, and
Wow.
he tried to get her. He tried to win the Gulfstream Park Oaks. She ran second that day to Power Squeeze, who went on to be a Grade 1 winner. Then the Kentucky Oaks probably just a little bit too far for her, and then back to reality to one turn, and she hasn't been sniffed since she's been back around one turn. And to Pete's point, while Scylla, in Zeitlos, in Society, in Vava, all have nice races and are nice horses, the one difference is that Ways and Means is still growing up, and I don't think we've seen the best from her. While we know who those other ones are, she can take another step forward, and I love that she drew to the outside.
Okay, loads of positives then. Loads of positives. On we roll to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint over the 5 furlongs. Beautiful mashup here of top-class American turf sprinter in Cogburn for Steve Asmussen, taking on what we have to offer over in Europe from the sprint division, which basically all season long has been Bradsell and Believing. And finally, Pete, it's happened. Believing you will look at her form lines and be like, she's a nearly horse. She's a nearly horse. Everyone's blaming the draw. Every time she's nearly won one of these Group 1s that she's contested for her last 3 runs and been beaten basically by the same horse in Bradsell. Everyone's blaming the draw for her being beat in various different capacities. I'm not a massive believer, excuse the pun, in that it's only the draw that keeps getting her beat. But anyway, they've blamed the draw. Finally, she gets a better draw than Bradsell. Bradsell out in 12, Believing out of 1. So something's come good at the end of the season for them. And if she gets beat this time around, they won't be able to blame the fact they got a bad draw against Bradsell. Big Evs is in there, obviously last year's juvenile winner, but a big price doesn't bring in the same level of form this time around. And Matt Chapman made a very good point to me, Pete, about Star Mystery being like a kind of forgotten horse in here for Appleby, due to kind of having that much more international form. So the kind of European angle hasn't quite been latched onto. I find this one of the deepest races. And as a result, Pete, one of the hardest to unpick, unfortunately.
Interesting. Well, from a U.S. perspective, Cogburn being the fastest U.S. turf sprinter ever and the kind of gate speed he has and the kind of finishing ability, it seems a bit more straightforward, especially with Bradsell. The worst possible draw for him, this horse who's never been around a bend. I just think his job gets so much harder being sort of by himself out there. Because on figures and the figure work that our man Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today, put together, Bradsell's like every bit as fast as Cogburn is. But the draws make the difference for me. Cogburn's going to be able to just sort of play the break, be where he wants. And I think the rest are running for second, honestly. There are some interesting ones, though, for exactas. Star of Mystery makes for a great exacta partner with her late speed to come running and be second to Cogburn. And so does your filly, Believing, who I think also just looks overpriced on how fast she is and how good she is. And she'll, need a little bit of luck from down there at the inside. But I was going to play Cogburn confidently on top and play the other 2 in underneath. And I mean, I take your point about you could make a lot of cases about a lot of different horses, and I've heard, wise guy support even for a Starlust in here. But I'm going to mainly just go through Cogburn and simplify it that way, and then just try to top up by maybe getting the exacta with one of those closers.
Team Mill Ridge will be rooting for AG Bullet in here. Did you see the note on AG Bullet, which I quite enjoyed? That AG Bullet, AG is the chemical symbol for silver, which is very appropriate because this filly is, of course, grey and she's very, very fast. And as a result, she's the fastest filly for sale at the upcoming sales. She is also going to sell at Fasig Tipton too. And they'll be rooting for her. She may have it on her hands to beat some of these, though, on all known form, JK.
Yeah, look, I thought she was interesting last time, going a little bit longer, but I think this is a tough sell. I remember Golden Pal's dominance and how I felt about him when he got in the gate, and both times. I mean, not unfortunately, but because it worked out well for our friends at Qatar Racing when Caravel won. But both times he got in the gate, I thought if he ran his race, he was going to be tough to beat. And I think he was always that horse. When he showed up, he was hard to beat. if you look at his past numbers before his fastest race he ever ran was the Breeders' Cup that he won, Cogburn's faster. And this is nothing against Wesley Ward, but I find Steve Asmussen as a trainer to just be more consistent, a little bit more safe. Yeah, maybe Wesley does some things that open him up for brilliance at times because he takes some chances. He's, a little bit more kind of shoot from the hip, a little wide, you know what I mean? But I can't think of someone I'd rather have than Steve Asmussen campaigning the fastest horse in a division, getting that horse ready. Whether it was Matoli or Gunrunner or Echo Zulu. I feel like these horses on these stages show up, and I feel like Cogburn is going to do that. And as far as Bradsell's concerned, for a horse that hasn't cornered, it's a short run going a flat 5 to that turn. I mean, there's a 0% chance that this horse is not at least in the 3 path. Now, if they somehow find a way to tuck in and get to the rail, I feel like they've had to slow down and basically be braking to get to that position, and then re-rally, circle horses at some point and run down the fastest North American turf sprinter seems like a mountain too high.
Okay. Yeah, seems unlikely. Pete, let us move on then to the distaff. Breeders' Cup distaff. Why are you laughing already?
Oh, it's just I was considering doing a game that we sometimes play on the show, which is how few words you can do a race in. This is one of those.
I'm unfortunately dropped out for a tiny section there. I just heard that you wanted to play a game.
The game is how few words can it take to give the Breeders' Cup distaff the analysis that you need, and the answer is 2 words. Torpedo Anna. That's why the joke popped in my head, and that's why I smiled.
Isn't it dreadful when you have to explain a joke? I hate that. Sorry. Tech problems didn't help us out there, Pete, either. Okay, so why don't we save Pete's voice, because it sounds like it's all about Torpedo Anna for Pete. So there we go. I will fluff out the words and ruin Pete's crap game by just adding in that Raging Sea in here, trained by Chad Brown, another little Millridge stat, I guess, is that she was Millridge's 39th Grade 1 winner, raised or sold since the turn of the millennium, which again is pretty impressive on the basis that they have fewer than 70 foals born on average a year. So it's a pretty serious statistic. And she comes here on a roll, for Chad Brown. Awesome Result is in there for Team Japan, and again, like, there are lots of chat about her. But Torpedo Anna JK just brings in a completely different level of form. We know how incredible she's been this year. And is there anything that can get her beat out of stall 2 in a race like this against obviously other fillies and mares?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a race I've stared at for a lot longer than I think most people might think. I was prepared and excited for Idiomatic to run. I thought that was going to be a heck of a showdown in which I was giving Idiomatic the lean. Torpedo Anna is an interesting horse for me because she's been so visually dominant, and she basically ran through her entire division. I thought her Kentucky Oaks was legit. I thought her Acorn was legit. Her Coaching Club American Oaks was legit. But she never really stopped the clock in a way that got me to feel all warm and fuzzy as if she couldn't lose, or the price that she's going to go off in on Saturday. Then she comes back in the Travers, and she hooks a horse that I like in the Classic and makes him earn all of it to the wire with a very fast number. And then she comes back, gets a weird trip. She's stuck in behind. She's getting ganged up on a quirky racetrack and kind of runs back to her previous numbers. I don't believe that horses, I'm not typically they could have run faster. I just still believe that she's pretty damn good based on what she did in the Travers, and there's nothing in here, in my opinion, that can beat her. But the price that she's going to go off at does not make me feel good about that situation.
Right. This isn't 2-to-1 ways and means or 8-to-5 ways and means. This is 1-to-2. The risk and reward turns on its head a little bit.
I think she's going to win. Like I think she's going to win. I like even like Awesome Result, who I think you can get excited about. I think is an interesting horse that is undefeated and has figures and Pete, you had some guys on to talk about the Japanese runners and one of them, I don't remember who it was, said that she's better than the mare that won the distaff at Del Mar last time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But I don't think there's a Torpedo Anna in there.
No.
And
it was one of the pace setups of all time as well for Marsh Lorraine. I mean, this horse, spoiler alert, I'll do this just to tease out the kind of great info you get if you sign up for inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. She's basically run a 99 figure the last 3 times. So she beats everything else in here. She beats Torpedo Anna's, weaker races, but you don't beat Torpedo Anna's Travers. And I happen to believe Ken McPeak, when he comes and talks to you on our Monster Pod, JK, and talks about how she was trained heading into the Pennsylvania Derby versus how she's going to be trained going into this. I think she's going to run back to her Travers. And that's why I joke around about you only need 2 words for her. I do want to mention, I absolutely respect for if Torpedo Anna doesn't win, Raging Sea comes into it, obviously. Awesome Result comes into it. But who's not far behind those two, who might be a horse I'll use for exactas? What's wrong with Candide at a big price, potentially to run in underneath here?
No, JK's not happy with that.
You don't like her?
No, I picked Candide. In the Coaching Club American Oaks, and I watched her run in the Alabama against Power Squeeze. Torpedo Anna owns Candide's lunch, and I'm talking
second and third.
Second and third, yes.
Yes.
I don't think
she's not going to beat her. She's not going to beat her.
Yes, JK's happy with that, but not.
She's also a good exacta partner because anybody who wants to go to the lead with Torpedo Anna, she can blow them away. Candide's a mid-pack closer. She just assuming a decent rail, she'll sit there past the tired speeds. She's going to have to beat those other 2 really good ones. But 15-1 morning line, I think she's an interesting exacta partner. That's all.
Pete, you mentioned there the Plus service and what subscribers to that will get. Can I just ask you, is the discussion I had with European expert Matt Chapman from Sky Sports Racing on the Plus service as well? Is that a Plus service plug?
That is going to be on the Breeders'. It gives me a chance to make another plug, actually. That's going to be on the Breeders' Cup YouTube channel. Some of our stuff is exclusively on the Breeders' Cup YouTube channel. So what I want you to do, wherever you're watching this right now, and I know from the stats, like 70% of you or more do not currently subscribe even to the In the Money Media channel. So do us a favor, subscribe to the In the Money Media channel. You'll get all our exclusive content there. But also, you got to subscribe to the Breeders' Cup channel because they have so much good stuff. We are a tiny, tiny piece of the amazing content you get over there. They got a lot more subscribers than us, but subscribe to both. Save yourself some trouble.
Yeah, go on, JK.
We're rolling. We're very close to 10,000, Pete.
Nice.
We'll get there. We'll get there before the weekend, but it'd be nice to you're sitting there doing that.
Let's do it during the show. If everybody watching just did it now, we'd get there. And you know how I like my little knickknacks behind me. I probably haven't told you this yet, Vanessa, but my daughter Perrin, she's a big YouTube fan. And she has done the research. Some of her creators that she follows. If you get to 10,000 subscribers, you get some sort of special knickknack that I could then put on the wall back there, except for the fact that she's going to steal it and take it upstairs, and I'll never see it again. But still, I can be a hero to an 11-year-old girl.
I love that.
You can put a picture of her back there.
Yeah, we want that. That was a lovely segue to be able to push everyone to subscribe. And the reason that I was pushing that Matt Chapman piece is because we spoke about the next race, of course, Breeders' Cup Turf, over a mile, 4 furlongs, as we would call it. And he made me keep this discussion very short indeed. He basically was like, I don't know why we're even having a conversation that's not in and around a very short discussion of Rebels Romance winning this. And I was surprised because, of course, we've got other interest in here. We've got Emily Upjohn, we've got JRB, we've got Luxembourg, Wingspan, second string for Aidan O'Brien. And that's before we get to all the other international and American interest as well. But Chappers was very clear cut on this. Look, you can all read his form lines. When he goes abroad, he's basically a very different horse. They use the German race as a springboard for this, which is what they've done previously when he's won out of the Breeders' Cup before. He's taking on here Emily Upjohn, who's on the downgrade. People have got excited about Frankie getting back in the saddle. I think he'd have to work a miracle on her. I just don't think she's the same horse she was now as a 5-year-old as she was this time last year and the year before. JRB, Pete, you've brought up the concerns about him, given what he did around Chester, comparable track, of course, to Delmar. I'm not so concerned about that, funnily enough, but I do think he'd have to step forward on what we've seen of him form-wise, and that's without even getting stuck in to the Aidan O'Brien horses. So Chap has made me keep it very short and sweet. You wanted to keep the Torpedo Anna conversation very short and sweet, Pete. Do you have the same confidence behind Rebels Romance here that Chappers and others seem to have?
I think it's potentially more complicated. I will not argue that Rebels Romance is the most likely winner, and that after the race, I could just be saying, why did I make this more complicated than it is? But there's some interesting horses in this race. None to me more so than one you mentioned in passing. Actually, the second string Aidan O'Brien runner, this filly Wingspan, might just be getting very, very good at the right time. Very progressive, unexposed type profile, 3-year-old filly late in the year. Maybe it was the ground that really helped last time, but maybe she's just getting good at the right time. We've seen Aidan O'Brien win at the Breeders' Cup at crazy prices with horses that he brings over. Wingspan might be 15-1 in here legitimately. Could even be more for people perceiving the outside draw being bad. I don't think it's that big a deal. Going the 1.5 miles would be a lot worse. Going that mile and 3 aces, we've heard multiple trainers, multiple world famous trainers complain about this week. Shout out to Misters Brown and Gosden. But I just think she has an interesting look. And look, absolutely, is Rebels Romance an A for me? 100%. Am I going to get knocked out of anything if he wins? No, I am not. But I just felt too boring picking him, frankly, Vanessa. And I thought there just wasn't that much juice in the price. And I just went around and around. Funny enough, this was one of those, I actually woke up in the middle of the night last night and said, it's just one of those weird things that hit me. It's like, I'm back in Wingspan in here. And that's my story.
Love that. Middle of the night epiphany. That's what we're here for. JK, how are you playing this race? How are you getting involved in this race? Which way in are you coming at it?
I hated Farbridge last time. I hated Farbridge the time before that. There's no way I'm playing Farbridge against these horses. I hated him against Silver Knot twice. Yeah, right. And we know the comparison of Silver Knot and Rebels Romance. This is also one of those situations where, there's been times in the BCBC where I've swung for the fences, whether it be Tarnawa, whether it be Yabir, and whether it be Enable. I understand that Rebels Romance is the most likely winner, but he doesn't give me those feelings. So this is a situation where I'll just try to survive in advance with what I heard you, Vanessa, talking with Pete about Luxembourg winning, having a grade 1 at 2, 3, 4, and 5. That reminds me of two horses I loved here, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe Jackie's Warrior did that. And also
you can plug a sponsor here. You can plug a sponsor here if you get
Beholder, Rushing Fall, and who's the other one?
Oscar Performance.
Yeah.
There you go.
You got to be world class to do that.
I'll be spready. I'll be spready here. Give
me some numbers for the sheet I'm going to send around to the plus people, JK.
I'll go 11, 11.54. 11.54. Yeah.
Okay.
What about you? What about you? Feet to the fire. Did Chapman bully you into making Rebels Romance your pick too, or do you have?
I didn't have an option, Pete. You got to watch that piece back. But as in all of the other horses we discussed were discussions and a lot of head-to-heads in races. Whereas this, I didn't put forward another horse and I didn't put forward Rebels Romance, but he didn't even let me have a discussion around it. So that was the end of that. To be honest with you, annoyingly, and he won't watch this, so I don't mind saying it, but Matt Chapman is annoyingly right a lot of the time. And so I rolled with it. Now, one thing me and Matt Chapman did agree on. Let us move on to the Breeders' Cup Classic. It is rare, myself and Matt agree, but we agreed on the fact that no part of our heads think City of Troy will win, but all parts of our heart hope he does. So On to the classic, and this is it. Jesus Christ, this is it. To be involved in any capacity in a Breeders' Cup and be able to talk about a European horse like this, with this profile, with these owners, with this desire to win the classic, what it means, everything, the story around City of Troy, it's such a thrill to be here, to see it, to see him, and it's going to be so exciting. And all of me wants him. I'd give up all the other European winners on the nights for City of Troy to win the classic. All of me wants him to win it. However, I don't think he will. I just don't. I've got nervous about it. I'm nervous about stall 3 for him. I'm nervous about all the horses coming in on top of him from those wider draws. I'm nervous having seen him this morning. I'm nervous, to say the least.
What'd you see this morning?
He's hot, and like he's sort of bouncing around the place, and I don't know. And as much as him being, he was definitely the kind of more uppity of that string, but nothing too much to worry about. First proper morning out, busy. I don't know. I'm not too concerned, I suppose. More so, JK, that I saw Fierceness and I saw Forever Young, and I thought, oh fuck, that's what I thought. I thought, oh fuck, that is what he has to be. No, just like, I don't know, they're built different, aren't they? And we don't see them. We don't see these like classic dirt horses with regularity in Europe, but obviously we see City of Troy all the time, and Fierceness and Forever Young came out at very similar times this morning. And I was kind of blown away, specifically actually by Forever Young, interestingly. And then a little bit later, JK, Sierra Leone came out. And that's a horse that I have really latched onto because of his defeats as much as anything, and the way he runs and how he puts his heart into it. And I've really sort of got aboard the Sierra Leone train. But seeing those 3 horses this morning, which are obviously the closest to City of Troy in terms of the betting currently at anti-post prices anyway, any hope I had is now gone, JK.
Well, I mean, here's the thing: is Aidan O'Brien is regarded as one of the best trainers in the world, one of the best trainers ever. He just as if I believe that if it was something that Baffert was continuously trying to do to win a race at Royal Ascot, I feel like he gets enough horses. He's a good enough horseman that eventually he's going to figure that out. And Aidan's been trying to do this for quite some time. And I think he's got a horse with a pedigree that suggests that he's going to be able to do it. I think that he did some different things this time around with the training to prepare, not so much for the surface, but for the style and race, which what they were going to do, kind of running a little bit more, which makes me happy. But I've always believed that the Japanese will win a Derby, or the Irish or the British will win a classic or a Derby when we don't have a special horse. But we have a special horse, in my opinion, in Fierceness, and that's the only thing that won't allow me to pick City of Troy. He's certainly not going to beat me, but I'm not going to pick him on top. I think Fierceness is special. I think that Fierceness has 4 brilliant races in his career. He's got back-to-back brilliant races. I think that 2 things were discovered with him, and I had a chance to do cart talk with this summer with Johnny V and with Todd. And one of the things that Todd had mentioned is understanding that allowing him to have more time in between his races. Although he thrived in between that short time of the Jim Dandy and the Travers, he did realize that having that time between the Derby and the Jim Dandy actually was beneficial. He's got that time now. He had that time. The other thing that Johnny recognized, which helps me forgive all of his bad performances, is he is not a horse that you can send and grab. He resents it. And Johnny just stays out of his way now, and he seems to be a much better horse. So I'm gonna get back involved with this Fierceness situation. I'm going to use City of Troy as well. And the one other horse that 2 other horses I want to mention. I don't get the Forever Young thing. While I have only fallen for the Sierra Leone thing once, I think Sierra Leone is a cool horse who's got some issues in terms of his style and the lugging in and all that stuff. But Forever Young's Derby doesn't make me feel that great because I don't think Mystic Dan's that good. I don't think Sierra Leone's that good. Catching Freedom's not that good. Who was the other? Resilience? Is that who was? It's like that race. I understand Forever Young almost won, but he got a huge setup in a race in which I'm not overly in love with. And I really wish that they would have ran Next in a start prior to this, so I didn't have to guess today if he would run at 1.25 miles. So it's an annoying situation because he's going to be a big enough price that I suppose you could do something with Next. I just wish I knew. And now I don't.
I often wish I knew, and I don't. In loads
Shout
of
out
situations.
Shout out Alex Bregman in the chat.
Oh, nice. Good to see him. Real racing man. And we're excited to see how he gets on this weekend for sure. For your official picks, JK, I've got Fierceness as a lone A. I wrote down City of Troy and Next as potential B types. Are you off? You're off Sierra as well?
No, I'll use City of Troy as an A. Next is like a C for me. It's like one of those deals. Like if he wins, I'll just be forever annoyed at the trainer for not running him 1.25 miles first. I'm not going to use Forever Young. And Sierra Leone I will use as a seahorse because I still do believe that somewhere in that horse with a 46 half mile and a clean trip going 1.25 miles, he can win a big race like this. So if that happens to be this time, then I mean he'll be a big enough price.
Yeah, it might
reminds me a little. Yeah.
I get it. I get him. But I'll make you the Forever Young case is the Derby. I agree with what your points about the Derby form are right, but you got to remember the break there. He's not some plodding closer that needed a setup. He was a horse that was completely taken out of his game, and I thought made a huge run even to get in position and then got mugged. So like if you watch the tape of that last run and look at those figure equivalencies, I mean, he ran a 104, 105 the last race and showed a ton more tactical speed and was obviously a little bit short there with this as the main goal. So I just wouldn't hold the Derby too much against him. I wouldn't lose the Breeders' Cup betting challenge not having Forever Young. That would be fairly strong advice. Fierceness is my top pick. I agree with you there, but I'm going to play a lot of tries here, and I really think that triumvirate of 3-year-olds is just super duper interesting. And then I think there's other horses to feather in there for as big prices to maybe hit the board much more second and third. There's Alex going for Governor Sam. I love it. As well you should, my friend. He is a fast horse, and he does look like he might be overpriced. Getting back to that juvenile turf sprint for a minute. But Ushpa Tesoro, I need underneath. And then my crazy bottom-up type keys for tries in there if they just go too fast, which they might. If Ryan Moore breaks well, I think they're going to dead send from down there. And if, Johnny, JK was just saying he's just going to go with him. There's a world in which they just go crazy fast. And the likes of Senor Buscador, might be able to make a late run into third or fourth for trifectas. And then the other one who's in much better, probably a better version of Buscador is Newgate, who had to be short last time. The talk has always been better going longer. I think he could run third or fourth, a long way back from those good 3-year-olds who are the best horses in the race, but trigger a really nice try payout. So that's my thought on the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Wonderful. I didn't realize, the guys, that I can see the comments section. I've now moved my screen so I can see the comments. So this is a huge distraction, but also love that we're live and we're getting the feedback. Yeah. City of Troy could finish last. Correct, Ian Sunderland. You are correct, my dear. Right. Onwards we go. I love the comments section. This is really jolly things along. Breeders' Cup Fillies and Mares Turf, guys. This is one of the races where I feel like we've got some obvious horses here for Team Europe, but I don't know. I'm not feeling particularly confident about this. I need some clarity with this, please, JK. You're going to have first stab at the Fillies and Mares Turf. Cinderella's Dream will be right up there as a favourite for Charlie Appleby, and of course brings in the form from Saratoga and the Belmont Oaks as well. And as those obvious claims, that's, prior to that had an international campaign in Maidan, came back for a classic with us, got beat by Almelka in that classic. That classic form, they were all in a bunch in behind. And Ylang, who reopposes here, was obviously a big disappointment in that classic. over in Newmarket at the start of the season. A lot of water's gone under the bridge, and it's a bit of an odd one that Aidan has 2 fillies in here, JK, in Ylang Ylang and Content, who essentially are coming in here off like kind of the wheels having come off. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're looking at it and it's quite rare profiles for Aidan O'Brien horses in a race like this, was my thought process. Do you see my angle there? It's a bit of an odd one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I listened to you and Pete today while I tried to take a nap on the couch.
I hope we weren't supposed to
I'm
trigger
glad we
the
sent
nap.
you to sleep. Excellent.
I was trying to. I couldn't. It was just captivating. I couldn't go to sleep. And you, Vanessa, you had pointed out, which I like a lot in terms of dirty form, is that Content's last 2 races on firm ground, she ran just fine.
Yes,
it's the 2 soft ground runs that were the bad ones. So you just take your Apple Pencil. If you don't have one, you should get one and just scratch it out and move on. I think she's in the mix. Warlike Goddess is a horse who's it's probably the horse I've singled the most in my life that I don't like very much. She just makes me angry. She's always doing something to get herself in some sort of a pickle. And I think she's really cool, and she runs well when she's in the right spots, and she disappoints when she's in the wrong ones. She's going to be too short of a price, but I won't let her beat me. Cinderella's Dream is the one that I'm going to officially pick on top. Charlie Appleby's just had entirely too much success in this country in these types of races. She's run well enough here in her last 2 starts. She was actually fairly dominant in both of those, considering the fact that, she didn't win by many in the Belmont Oaks, but the way she did it was very impressive. And her Saratoga Oaks, she could have ran going backwards. So, I'll use those 2. And look, for my boy Highland Reel, I'll be screaming for Full Count Felicia to go out there and open up by 100 and see if she can't wire him again.
Just hearing as well, only like an hour ago, and again, God, loving the bloody comments here. John went in with Ylang Yalang's been scratched, and that's new news to me. It happened about an hour ago. Ylang Ylang out. And that is even more interesting, guys, because I was intrigued about the fact that Ryan Moore had chosen Ylang Ylang over Content, with Frankie getting on Content. Not a bad second string jockey selection, obviously, but Frankie will now presumably Ryan will now get on Content. So that also mixes that up, and that is new news to me since recording this pod. That's come through, Pete.
We have very similar numbers, JK and I do here, but I'm more forgiving. I'm a more forgiving person than Jonathan. I don't know if that's the case or what, but I see a lot of excuses for Warlike Goddess. In one notable instance, it was maybe the clearest case of Rosarioing in the history of Rosario. And I love Joel Rosario, but when he's not on form, he puts in some shockers. Warlike Goddess was guilty of one of them. But one of the biggest races I thought where she was best that didn't win was Del Mar. I guess it was 3 years ago now, when I just thought she moved on a day when ground loss on that turf course mattered. She moved wide. She moved early. She made the move that broke it really apart. And Love's Only You was just, moved last, and moving last was best there. But Warlike Goddess ran a winning race that day. I thought the last day against Far Bridge, she moved a little bit too soon. And while I agree Far Bridge isn't a world beater who I'm supporting in the turf, I mean, he has shown us something in the kinds of figures he's been running the last 2, that you just look at Warlike Goddess's figure she ran there, it stacks up very well with these. I think Full Count Felicia is going to likely set it up for her as well. I'm going to use Cinderella Stream. I agree with JK's points on that one. Has some really nice bits of form. Just the other fastest horse in the race. Part of me wants to try to lock it up with those 2. But, I mean, the point about Content getting better on firm ground, I'd like it to be a game time decision. What price is she, right? If she's sub 6-1, it's just the price she can beat me. But if she's sneaking off at a bigger number than that on her best bits on this type of ground, I think she belongs on some tickets. I think it's the same 3 for both of us in here, JK.
Okay, you're on the same page. I mean, a little bit dull, but we like it when there's an agreement.
I'm gonna use Soprano too. I thought she ran into a buzzsaw last time, and she feels pretty. I thought she ran just fine. And then Pete, I remember you had shared, if I'm not mistaken, she was beaten like a link to Porta Fortuna, right?
Yep.
Before she came over here. And so I like that form line in this spot. I don't love the draw, but you know what? I mean, whatever. It's a long enough run to the first turn. She's got to tuck in a little bit, save some ground.
Let us move on to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, boys. Oh, JK showing us his hair, a full head of hair as well.
Because I have my foot is cramping, and if I don't stand up, it's going to lock up on me.
Oh no! Nobody wants a crampy foot, JK.
You're wearing pants, I hope.
Yeah, Jovanina's birthday weekend really taking its toll on me.
Hey,
happy birthday to her, by the way.
Yeah, we'll get to celebrate with her this weekend. Right, let us move on to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, guys. Whilst JK gets his little crampy foot sorted out, Pete, I'll come to you for Breeders' Cup Sprint thoughts, because of all of Saturday's races, obviously I'm sort of coming in, blindish to this sort of race, and I just think that this is one of the hardest to unpick. Federal Judge in there, Raging Torrent in there, Remake in there. I don't know. I just looked at this and I thought, well, you're here as the expert to tell us what's going to happen here, actually, Pete.
I am thinking that sometimes, as much as I do the work and put in, watch a lot of replays and work on figures and all this stuff, sometimes you can let top jockeys and their agents do a little bit of the form study for you. So I thought it was really interesting, Flavien Prat ending up with several choices, ending up on Mulliken in this spot. This was a race that Mulliken really looked extremely suited for when we saw him this summer at Saratoga. It's a tricky draw maybe, right? Because you've got speed horses all around, and I don't want him to get caught up, but I'm sort of hoping Flavien Prat, with all his skills, can sort of break from their running. Hopefully other horses go on with it. He can just get a really nice stalk and pounce trip. I feel like he makes a lot of sense on figures, a lot of sense on forms, and I trust Pratt to get him the right kind of trip in this spot. I'm going to go with Mulliken, and I'm feeling pretty good about him. I still am reserving the right to maybe come up with some backup ideas in here, but I feel really good about Mulliken being my top selection.
Okay. In Flavien Prat, do you trust as well, JK here?
I'm laughing at the Lasix comment. Are you on mute?
Yeah, I can see that. I like that.
I said this is 100%. This is 100% true. So this race, and Pete knows, Vanessa, you probably know as well. I am a speed of the speed guy. I hate closers and dirt sprints. It's just, they annoy me. It just never works out. The riders see it too. They all grab. Someone gets loose and wires a feet. This race has to be fast. It just has to. There is one-way speed types. They're drawn inside. They're drawn outside. There's different connections. There's Windstar has two. Let one roll. Take one. I mean, this race has to be fast. And I am going to land on a closer, and I'm gonna play the 9 Remake. And this is. And Sean Borman told me that he didn't trust the figure or the horse, but I watched Remake's last couple of races. Look, he's going to take back. He's going to eat dirt. He was eating dirt in Korea on the sandy racetrack. He's going to be fine at Del Mar eating dirt. They have to run in front of him. He comes rolling down the middle of the track. And I trust his form to a certain extent because of the Golden Shaheen when he ran down Skelly. Skelly has gone a little bit weird. He does this turn right thing that I would think that Steve Asmussen will continue to try to get resolved. But at one point this spring, Skelly was the best sprinter in this country. He was the fastest. He was the most consistent. He was running triple-digit numbers. It made a ton of sense. And Remake ran by him. And so I trust that Remake has that race in him. And I'm just hopeful that with this setup that I believe Remake's going to get, I think he could get there. Nakatomi is another one who's started to be a little bit closer now. I'm hoping they can somehow find a little bit of that take back, make one run thing that Nakatomi used to do all the time. And then the speed that I trust is Mulliken. If there's a speed horse that's going to win, he's drawn outside of the other ones. Skelly, I believe, will clear and go. And I think that Mulliken could work out a pretty nice trip towards the outside. And so those are the 3 that stand out to me. Remake will be my top choice. And I'll use Raging Torrent as a B, just a horse that I kind of fell in love with from a speed standpoint. I don't love the rail draw for him. I feel like it kind of forces him into it. And if it does force him into it, it's just going to make that pace faster. And I think it's going to hurt him. But for whatever reason, if he happens to get that fortunate take back, flop outside run, then he could win this race. So I like the horse too much as an individual to not use him.
Where were you seeing remake figures? The one place we don't have figures for is Korea.
I don't know. I asked Sean. I said, Sean, what was the? I said, do you have a figure for remake? He said, yeah. He goes, and he said what it was, which I don't. It's his. I don't want to share.
He'll share it on the Pro Player show that we do in tomorrow.
And so,
tune in tomorrow for that.
It was just like whatever. It was a whatever
maybe
number.
He was talking about the Golden Shaheen or something. But
maybe
anyway,
he was. Yeah.
To be continued.
To be continued, as is the rest of our show. So let us move on. Just 2 more races to do, guys. Breeders' Cup Mile up next, please. And I think it was now. I'm obsessed with the little comments box, boys. I'm loving this. Simon,
everyone's being polite.
I think only the ones. There's only polite ones. I think someone hated my voice, but we always have someone on who hates my voice, and I can't do anything about it. So when people say that they hate my voice, it's like, mate, I can't change it. If I could, I would. No, I joke. I love my voice. Simon O'Neill said earlier that Cinderella's Dream was Charlie Appleby's best chance of a winner on the night. But I think he himself has said that Notable Speech in the mile is his best chance for a winner all weekend, which when you're saddling Rebels Romance, Al Qudra and the rest of them, it's a fair, and Cinderella's Dream, it's a fair statement. So read into that what you will, because this, for me, if the sprint we've just spoken about was one of those races I just couldn't even fathom or start to figure out, this mile is one of those races where I could wake up in the middle of the night, Pete, and have thoughts on different horses here. Because Notable Speech, Charlie Appleby's given it the big one, right? Our Guineas winner, but he's become our summer's boom or bust runner. It's boom time or bust time with him. He's had blowouts when he's been well fancied, most noticeably, of course, at Royal Ascot, then latterly in France on softer ground. But the Ascot run, that left some punters scarred. Meanwhile, Porta Fortuna, the filly, just keeps on winning. She just keeps on winning. She nearly won a Guineas, and since then, she's won 3 Group 1s on the bounce. She does it from different spots on different tracks in Europe. She Ascot, Newmarket, and Leopardstown. Different rides. She's tactically versatile. She's ground versatile, but she's going to get the ground she likes. And it's so funny looking at these profiles because you've got the dodgier profile of Notable Speech, but all the hype. And then the Porta Fortuna, solid as a rock profile. And, Donica would keep a pretty quiet, low-key vibe about him. And then throw in Ramatuelle, who's the filly that I love in here because of what she did in the foray over 7. And Christopher Head's excitement about bringing her over for the mile and what she's going to do around Delmar and the turning track will really suit Ramatuelle. I've actually banged on about this race long enough, but can you tell that this is engaging me? Can you tell it's engaging me, Pete?
Oh, what a great field. And over the summer, it wasn't clear we were going to have 3, proper Group 1 horses. It's a much stronger European contingency that I was expecting we were going to get at one point. But I mean, those are the horses to me that you just ran through. But the more I look at it, I'm going to do a bit of an Appleby we trust here. This is the fact that he is so confident about Notable Speech, the fact that Notable Speech apparently looks so well. He knows what it takes to succeed here. This pedigree should succeed very well in American racing. I mean, we've just seen this movie before. Godolphin with this, beautifully bred Dubawi coming here. He doesn't need to come here. There's no pressure on him to bring this horse to this race. I feel like he is just speaking a ton of confidence by this horse's very presence in the race. I like both fillies. I do think Ramatuelle is particularly interesting as one I just think will be suited by American racing. But I think if Notable Speech runs his good race,
very much so,
there's reasons to believe that he will run his good race. I think he's the winner. I'm picking him. And I'm going to play exactas with the fillies, and that's how I'm approaching this race.
I love it. I'm so here for it. I'm so engaged with it. I can't wait for it. JK, we've obviously rattled on about those 3, but there's plenty of others in there as well. Is there anybody else you want to throw into the mix? What do your numbers look like for this?
Yeah, I mean, my heart, my soul, my being will be rooting like hell for Carl Spackler. I know I share this sentiment when I say I love me some damn Bob Edwards, and I'm excited. And this horse is really cool too, right? I mean, he's been winning. He's won a handful of times at Saratoga, which is always a lot of fun when you get to see a horse consistently. And he's turned into a really damn good horse, and he's forward. He reminds me of his ex-stablemate, Rushing Fall, who was forward. I just wish they would have brought a lesser group over. I don't think that's impossible for him to win. I don't hate the draw for a horse who's tactical like he is. If you watch his races, he runs in the clear all the time. He's always in the clear. He's not a horse that needs cover. And you know, you're going to have Tyler's full attention. So I'm going to be rooting for him to win more than looks. I think, you know, is a 30-1 shot, 20-1 shot that I think will get ignored a little bit that could be involved. But I watched an interview that Matt Chapman did with Charlie Appleby today. It was pretty funny, where he was basically like trying to force him to say that Notable Speech is the best 3-year-old he's ever brought over here and the best horse he's ever brought over here for this race. And eventually he got it out of him that's the case. He's won this race 3 years in a row with Master of Seas, Modern Games, and Space Blues, and this one's the best one. And for me, when I can turn on a European tape and feel wowed by what I'm watching without having full context of what it is, it tells me something. And I felt that way about Notable Speech. Watching the Guineas and watching the Sussex, it was, as someone who watches a lot of four-legged animals run in circles or straightaways, I felt something watching it. I think this is a really damn good horse. And like I said, I'll be rooting for the lime green and purple, but Carl better bring his running shoes.
Yeah, I mean, if the Euros don't win this, but Bob Edwards did, I'd be okay with that. I'd take that, JK. Fair. But that's really the only way I'd take defeat for the Euros in this, and I don't think it'll happen, in fairness. Right, let us roll on. Last race then. Is it weird finishing with the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile? Like, is that going to feel weird on the day, I wonder? I don't know.
It's a get-out race.
Pardon?
It's the get-out race. We do that. We do that here. Like, I don't know if it's to help with traffic or to – I actually think it's to probably get some – you know, on Derby Day, there's usually 2 races after the most – you know, exciting race of the year. There's like 2 allowance races after it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's also weird to me. I will say this out loud. It doesn't actually, I don't need to say it out loud. I've already said it a couple of times. It doesn't matter because he's not running, but I wish Domestic Product was running the sprint. I think he would win. He'd be my absolute pick. He'd be my all-in Breeders' Cup bet if he was in the sprint. I still think he'll win this race. It's just not a great group. Muth just never really turned out to be what we kind of all hoped and thought he was going to be. Seize the Gray can only win when every single thing goes his way. Saudi Crown, I don't think drew that well and is very inconsistent. Mufasa, I don't understand why they're not running him in the sprint. And Skippy Longstocking, you know, I love Safi Joseph, but he probably needs Charlestown and it's kind of these lower level grade 3s to win. I'd love to own him, and he's a really cool horse. They've done a great job with him, but I just think Domestic Product's the best horse in here, and I think he'll win.
Any other coverage for you? Sorry, Vanessa, to step on you there, but for the notes, like he's the only horse you'd even mention, like in terms of positives?
I hope desperately that I am drinking an adult beverage in the lead, hoping no one catches me. And not betting this race. I just don't have it's just not one that I have a super strong opinion about.
Oh, I hope that's the case too, JK.
Yeah, me too. Or the opposite could be that I don't, and I could still be having an adult beverage watching this race.
Yeah. Also, JK, I hate to break it to you, but like we know you're good, but you're currently not great because you missed a sponsor shoehorn in opportunity there, and it's a really left field one, but you know, a man that does his research should have known that Seize the Grey was sold by Millridge, and you didn't mention that.
Raised there. He was raised on the farm too. I mean,
yeah, well, I got my racehorse people tweeting me all the time about Seize the Grey because I said he would never win another grade 1, and then he won the Pennsylvania Derby, and they're like, well,
Go on, Pete. Last line to you here. You're obviously shocked that JK is all in and all aboard domestic
Well, no,
product.
I mean, I really like domestic product too. I just thought since he didn't like him that much, I was waiting for him to have some other idea, but I get it. He just isn't psyched about the race. I think domestic product fits great in here. I'm okay being alive to some things at the end that pay off to him. I just think he's going to get an absolutely perfect trip in the spot. He's done well going one turn. He's done well going two. He's also versatile in terms of where he attacks from. He can lay close if it's not a fast pace, but he can also sit back. I think sit back is going to be the order of the day here with the other speed signed on. I do think that Saudi Crown is probably the best of that speed. I don't hate the idea of having a backup line running through him, but I'm mostly going to be about domestic product. And you mentioned about Seize the Gray and the Millridge connection. Tumbarumba, who shows up here, I just think Tumbarumba is a really interesting example of a horse that, this horse is going to probably be 20, 30 to 1. Very talented horse, but will be that price because that's kind of what the Breeders' Cup is all about. You can get great looking paper, great looking past performances on horses that are going to be these kind of prizes. And I know they're hoping he's going to continue to run back to those big races and end up in races like the Pegasus and Saudi World Cup. He's an Oscar performance. That's his connection to Millridge. But yeah, for me, domestic product, tiny little bit of Saudi Crown. And that's how I'm going to play the Dirt Mile. And hopefully we'll, cash a bunch of tickets and get some nice winners.
Okay. Well, that wraps it up. That was a rattle through, wasn't it? Well done, boys. Thoroughly enjoyed that. I don't enjoy the person who's told me that I remind them of Katie Hopkins. That is not. You guys will have to look up Katie Hopkins.
Who is that?
She's like a broadcaster over in the UK, but if I'm thinking of the right person, she's like quite controversial and quite painful. Two things that two adjectives I would not like to be described as: controversial and painful. Thank you. I feel like that's thank you and good night from me. Look,
that's just some person who's never been outside their house before and heard your accent and is like, oh, you remind me of Princess Diana.
Yeah, I take that one though. Right. Okay. Finally, guys, we need to wrap up. So, Pete, I'm handing. Consider this the host baton. I'm handing it
There's
back.
a way to do this where we can. There we go. I've got it now. Thank you, Vanessa. What a wonderful job making this so much fun. JK and I at the beginning were like, we're so tired. We're going to be done by 9. Yeah, we weren't going to be done by 9. What fun conversation led by you. Great to get all of your thoughts. Looking forward to having you on some audio only podcasts tomorrow. Well, tomorrow we'll have you audio only on the free side. We'll get you Thursday for your final appearance. That'll be on the In the Money Plus side. Just a reminder to people, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus, the place to go to get all our info. We'll thank our friends and sponsors over at Millridge one more time. And these are great people. If you're looking to get involved in the thoroughbred industry, the amount of knowledge and just generosity of spirit you're going to get when you talk to Price Bell and Headley Bell. You've been around the farm there, Vanessa. It's truly a special place. And if you have questions about getting involved in the industry at any level, really, they're a great place to call. Millridge Farm, if you want to go and look that up and learn more about the business. I know I've learned a ton from the team over there. JK, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Godspeed in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Going to be talking to you more, maybe seeing you on the YouTube side. Reminder again, subscribe to that In the Money Media YouTube channel. For Vanessa,
the link is in the links in the comments. Vanessa, I'll see you tomorrow.
Beautiful. For Vanessa, for JK, I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your Breeders' Cup photos.